Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak recently spoke at Nomad Capitalist Live and talked about his 3 passports. Steve Wozniak co-founded the most iconic company of our time, and he recently spoke at Nomad Capitalist Live. What you don't know about Steve Wozniak is that he built a pretty cool passport portfolio. In addition to his native U.S. citizenship, he also holds Serbian citizenship, which he was granted by the president, and he also holds Grenada citizenship in the Caribbean, which he obtained through a citizenship by investment program. There are rumors online that he obtained Polish citizenship through his ancestry. He told me that's not true. But here's what makes Steve Wozniak's passport portfolio pretty good. He has U.S. citizenship, which I gave up. I think it's actually a pretty toxic passport. We help clients here prepare to no longer be American in the future if the taxes get worse, if the regulations get worse, if the geopolitics get worse, or if the U.S. just decides to become nastier to its own citizens as its standing in the world declines. However, for someone who lives in the United States, as Steve Wozniak does, it's obviously one of the higher quality passports you can have. But he also decided to get a passport by investment in a country that's entirely different than the United States. And you can't get much different in terms of size than the tiny Caribbean nation of Grenada. Now, Steve Wozniak got the passport back when it cost only $150,000, and the price has gone up a little bit since then, but for a low six-figure donation, you can become a citizen of Grenada if you've got a clean criminal record. They are making that process a bit more bureaucratic in terms of more paperwork. There's going to come a time in the near future when you will actually need to go and spend 30 days there. So this is an opportunity that Steve Wozniak took, but you don't need to be a multimillionaire or a celebrity founder to do it. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We help our clients obtain passports in Caribbean countries like Grenada. There are 4 others that have similar programs where you make a donation, you get a passport. But what I like about these Caribbean countries is not only are they opening up freedom of movement between them to where you can become a citizen of some of these Caribbean countries, and that gives you the right to go and live in other countries. And many of these countries have tax incentives to where if you live there, you may be able to pay very low or even 0 taxes. And that's something Steve Wozniak has in his back pocket now. He can go and live anytime, not just in Grenada, but in any of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States countries, and to a growing extent within the Caribbean community. You're seeing greater freedom of movement in that region, which means as a U.S. citizen, you can live in one country. That's not a great passport to have in your portfolio on top of the high taxes, the citizenship-based taxation, the geopolitical weight that's increasingly bringing the U.S. down. But as an American, of course, you can visit other countries, you can get residence permits in other countries, but as of right, you cannot live anywhere else. And so tiny Grenada allows you to do that, and it has the exact opposite geopolitical profile to where, let's say Steve Wozniak wanted to found the next big company. He may not want to be an American if he's going to be selling those products all over the world. Being a citizen of Grenada may be more geopolitically advantageous. It's certainly going to be more tax advantageous for him. And so it's a passport that I think every entrepreneur should have in their back pocket. I personally obtained St. Lucia citizenship by investment years ago. I paid only $100,000. And so it's proof that the price of these passports is going to keep going up. Steve Wozniak got in early, and so now he has basically the United States and its exact geopolitical and tax counterbalance in Grenada. So building a passport portfolio, you're trying to balance. We had one client come to us a couple of years ago, and he was in the process of obtaining British citizenship in addition to his U.S. citizenship. Now, if you can obtain British citizenship, you should probably obtain it. But you're not really building a diversified passport portfolio. The taxes in both are bad. Now, as a British citizen, you can always choose to leave the UK and no longer be in their tax net. That's something Americans can't say. And so I'd rather be British than American. But looking forward in the coming decades and generationally, the UK and the US have a very similar heft geopolitically, financially, their debt levels, all those things. As Western countries get increasingly desperate, you're not really diversifying your risk against black swan events and the kind of stuff we imagine Western politicians are going to do to their citizens. Grenada is the escape hatch, and that's why the U.S. and the European Union have been putting pressure on those countries, getting them to raise their prices, getting them to add more paperwork. It's not that much more difficult, but now you have to go and do an interview to get citizenship. They're going to add a residence requirement where you have to go and spend probably a month down to get a Caribbean citizenship in the near future. And so they're making it more and more difficult, precisely, in my opinion, because they know it is a counterbalance to high tax, arrogant Western societies. And so that's why I think Steve Wozniak made a great decision getting a Caribbean passport. Anyone can do that. The other passport he got was in Serbia, where the president gave it to him. And here's how he told that story. Now, the reality is there are countries around Europe and elsewhere in the world where you can be awarded citizenship. So Kevin O'Leary was given citizenship in the UAE. That's a country where you can go and very easily get a golden visa. We help our clients get UAE golden visas by buying real estate or just even by putting money in the bank. It's a great way to diversify yourself. Even if you don't want to move to Dubai tomorrow, you can get a golden visa for 10 years just by getting some assets in their country. And if you have, $5 million in the bank in your country, why not move $500,000 to a bank in the UAE and get a 10-year call option, basically, on being able to live there no matter what happens. Get in early because, again, prices go up. But that's a residence permit. What very few people get is citizenship, and yet there are several hundred people, I'm told, they will get UAE citizenship, generally by investing somewhere in the mid 8 figures and up, or being celebrity investors who come there. So even countries that historically haven't really been in the citizenship game are allowing people like Kevin O'Leary to get their citizenship in the UAE, and citizenships by exception generally bypass the rules on dual citizenship. So Kevin O'Leary can stay Canadian. He's also Irish, and he's now Emirati, and that's a great passport portfolio too. Same thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was allowed to keep his Austrian citizenship even after being naturalized as a U.S. citizen in kind of a reverse exceptional citizenship procedure. Even if you're not a silver screen star or a Shark Tank star, there are countries where, for example, if you're willing to go and start a green energy company, we've heard, there's a country that's willing to grant you nationality by going and hiring highly paid people in their country. If you're willing to go and buy a factory or buy a business or maybe donate to a local cultural monument, generally in the low 7-figure up to mid 7-figure range. There are other countries in Europe that will grant you citizenship. And I would imagine these deals can be negotiated, where if you say, hey, listen, I'm looking for a place to go and hire 100 people, you could go and you could find a country that would give you citizenship through a legitimate constitutional procedure where perhaps a minister who's going to look good by you bringing 100 jobs is going to go and recommend you to the parliament or to the president or whoever has the power to issue that citizenship. And so that's something that Nomad Capitalist has spent time looking into. How do you obtain citizenship in fully legal ways? The same way that Steve Wozniak did, by making someone in the government look good and by adding value to their economy. And so there's plenty of countries around that you can do that. Poland and Austria are two that are commonly talked about, but those are much harder to get into. In the case of Austria, some people have literally had to invest 10 million euros and more to get that. Poland has been notoriously stingy in recent years at naturalizing people through exceptional means, but there are other countries in Europe where you can do that. And so the bottom line is Steve Wozniak built a passport portfolio where he's got the United States, where he likes to live, he's happy to pay the taxes, it's got geopolitical heft that benefits him living there, probably doesn't benefit him there going out into the rest of the world, but he's got that option. He can always renounce it if he wants to. He's got the tiny island of Grenada. He has access to the British Commonwealth, to their consular services, including at the British embassies. He can travel totally freely around the world, including to countries like Russia and China, which he couldn't travel to visa-free as an American. And no one's going to judge him. No one's going to judge a Grenadian citizen. They're not going to say, why are you making our country difficult? Banks aren't going to reject him. Grenada offers a lot of benefits. And then for Serbia, it is a frontier within Europe, but not within the European Union. It is a country where you don't have all the EU rules, but you certainly have a European way of life. And so you have kind of the best of both worlds if you are a wealthy person who wants Europe, but not as much of the bureaucracy. He's put those all together. How could he make it better? I think he could certainly go and claim a citizenship by descent through his ancestry. If he is entitled to that in Poland, some of those, like Italy, are making it harder, and so you want to claim a citizenship by descent as soon as you can. That's something that we help our clients do, from Italy to Portugal to countries outside of Europe. And so that's the one thing he could do to make it better. He could potentially go to an ASEAN country like Cambodia and get citizenship by making a donation. He could go and look at some of the African citizenship by investment programs that have cropped up, like Sao Tome and Principe, now Botswana. Egypt may be less interesting for him, but there could be something there. He could go to South America. And quite frankly, there's probably someone in South America who would like to give him citizenship the same way he got it in Serbia. And so those are the things that I would keep adding to the portfolio. Here's what makes Serbia unique. You have a lot of the benefits of Europe without being in the European Union. It's a country that is more geopolitically neutral, so you have some of the benefits of, let's say, a Hungary, for example, where they're not just lockstep in line with Brussels. Serbia gets along with Russia, they get along with China. It's a country that is that beats to its own drum, and you want more of those in your portfolio. There are a few countries that may not get along with Serbia geopolitically, but from a travel perspective, I mean, Serbia and Albania, two countries that rib each other historically. People travel back and forth all the time. It's not something where you're locked out of the country. Maybe someone raises an eyebrow, but even that I don't think happens. And so on a global level beyond that, no one really cares if you're Serbian. Here's Steve Wozniak talking about going to Europe as a Serbian. Nobody bats an eye.